In this video, we're going to talk about pressure and measuring pressure. So gases are a special matter of state because it's the only matter of state that's compressible. And in this chapter, we're going to learn how to link pressure, volume, temperature, and the amount of moles of a substance. The way that we measure gases is by using pressure. Pressure is simply the force exerted per unit of surface. So if you push on a surface, the size of your hand or the size that's making contact with the wall times the amount of force that you're pushing is the pressure that you're applying to that surface. The SI unit is pascals, which is kilograms per meters times seconds squared. However, we do not typically use pascals in chemistry. We use something called atmospheres and millimeters of mercury. There are two broad ways of measuring pressure, which is a barometer, and that's for measuring the atmospheric pressure. So in a barometer, the mercury, or whatever substance you're using to measure the pressure of it, is open to the atmosphere. So it's simply how hard is the atmosphere pressing down, which then drives the mercury or substance up into a tube, and we measure the height of that. If you watch the weather, they'll talk about atmospheric pressure in inches. And again, it's just a measure of distance. Typically in sciences, we talk about it in millimeters of mercury, mmHg. A manometer is any device that measures it in a closed system. So this is an example of a manometer. There's no open to the atmosphere here. I have a gas, and here's my, this is called a J tube. And so the pressure of the gas pushes on the mercury down, and that pushes it up. And then I measure the difference in height from where it goes up inside the J tube to where it's there. And again, it's a measure of distance, which we then relate to the force of the this. It's also considered to be a device to measure blood pressure because your blood vessels are a closed system. So you measure blood pressure with a manometer. So I introduced the term millimeters of mercury, which is symbolized as mmHg. It's also called a torr, okay? And so sometimes some books refer to it as torr, other times it's that. So 1 millimeter of mercury is equal to 1 torr. You'll hear torr used more in a physics term, in a vacuum application. And it's exerted by a column of mercury 1 millimeter high at 0 degrees C, is the definition of it. Atmosphere, used in chemistry, is equal to 760 millimeters of mercury. So 760 torr, or 760 millimeters of mercury, is equal to 1 atmosphere. I don't give you this number anywhere, and so you must memorize this number here. And also, we talked about the SI unit being pascals. 1 atmosphere is 1.01 times 10 to the 5th pascals, or it's 101.3 kilopascals. Is a common conversion. We're not going to be doing much with pascals or kilopascals in this class. Okay. We are going to be using millimeters of mercury, torr, and atmospheres. So the question is, if I have a closed tube manometer, which is kind of redundant because if it's a manometer, it has to be closed tube, has a pressure of 0.047 atmospheres, calculate the pressure in millimeters of mercury. We're going to use the same strategy here to calculate this problem, and that we have a pressure, and I know it's a pressure because the units is atmospheres, and it's 0.047 atmospheres. And this is calculate the pressure, so pressure is what I want to know. So this tells me it's a unit conversion, and I want that in millimeters of mercury. And what you are going to be expected to know is that 760 millimeters of mercury is equal to 1 atmosphere. So a unit conversion, I'm going to start with the one that's not a unit conversion, or it just has 1 unit there. So I'm going to start with 0.047 atmospheres. And this is dimensional analysis again from chapter 1. So I want to cancel out atmosphere, so it has to be across this horizontal line. So it's 1 atmosphere is 760 millimeters of mercury. So my cancel, and these are on the same side of the horizontal line, so I multiply, and that becomes 35.7, and then the units is millimeters of mercury. And that is the end of this video.